way away.
Hello. Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you, Mayor.
Good morning.
T-Mac?
How you doing?
It turned out
I don't know.
he was going to
So
do,
shopping.
you know that one we
Like a
took,
year, you gotta start
that
on something.
group picture? But he didn't have enough time. He's like, it just takes so much detail, so you're like, let me just do you first, and then next year, we'll do everybody.
Hapster?
That's cool.
That's all right,
We got
that works.
signatures,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I like it.
Yeah.
A lot of syllables before you seem like you have some options.
I know. When it finally comes, you'll know. We'll all know.
Yeah.
And it'll be just one that will last forever. Too.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Did you scoot around tonight?
My hands have been frostbitten if I tried to do that. Well,
I didn't know how diehard you were on this.
I was doing it mostly in nice fall evenings.
Mhm.
That's kind of where it stopped.
Gotta draw the line somewhere.
Somewhere.
Understood.
Allison kind of,
Did she scoot?
no, and she didn't really approve of what I was doing either.
Probably for safety.
For safety, yes.
Yeah.
She's kind of like, what's going on? What are you doing? So,
All right.
kind of had to answer to that too a little bit.
That's right. Absolutely.
Hello, looks like Mr. Fisher has joined. We just want to make sure we can hear you.
Yeah, can everyone hear me?
Sounds good to me. Thank you.
you know. Pardon me. Oh, yes, thank you, yes. I was gonna look that way, trust me.
Oh, you're gonna, okay.
Yes, I was gonna look.
I'm not usually, usually rolling in like 5 minutes before. so I don't
Exactly,
get- don't like
I was pleasantly
weird.
surprised. I was like, okay.
sit here and kind of settle.
Yeah, it's a Christmas gift.
Get ready for a good meeting for this time.
Take a breath and get yourself composed. Let your heart rate get back there.
Normally, this is really not bad.
You just come straight.
That was kind of the case.
Yeah. Are you working from home?
Says Martin.
Yes.
We're allowed to go back into the way there.
Mm-hmm. Some of both. Yeah.
Kind of. We had the opportunity to work one day a week, and I choose never to do this. So I was kind of, and was forced to do all this.
Mm-hmm.
Like our friends.
That's right.
Have a job still, so.
Gotta be grateful for that, right?
Yeah. You working for like
Reset the meeting to
large organizations, and that's the first day. Doing all this.
Okay.
She said she selected to join the meeting and she be on it.
Your first and going remote today.
Say it again.
Is Mayor Burton going
Yes.
remote today?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
She doesn't have to do anything weird because she's on live chat right now. Yeah. No, just check on it. They're on laptop.
That might be the case.
So Hank, this sent to you, this question, another thing, request you to join. you can.
Okay, good. I will now call to order our regularly scheduled Apex Town Council meeting for Tuesday, December 15, 2020. And I would like to welcome you who joined us here in the council chambers and also those who are joining by live stream. A reminder to those who are here, if you plan to speak tonight in public forum or public hearing, please sign up on the appropriate sheet to my right. And also, I want to remind our council members, if you are calling a motion or seconding a motion, please be sure to say your last name first so we can get it recorded. I'd like to start a meeting with an invocation. The town of Apex values and celebrates diversity and inclusion. We see diversity as a strength that binds our community together. Inviting members from different faith communities to deliver an invocation at the beginning of our council meeting supports this unity. Recognizing that not everyone practices the same traditions, we welcome you to have a private moment of silence during this time. And what I would like to talk about tonight is we are in a season that we celebrate celebrate joy and giving and unity and coming together. Although we may have different faiths and traditions and how we celebrate, we're still one community unified. So I want to make sure that we keep that in perspective as we move forward in our community. I just want to say how, as far as giving, what I have been giving is the opportunity to serve as mayor. It is truly a blessing from God, and I also am blessed by my fellow council members, the staff here, the town of Apex, and this entire community. So I just want everyone to know that. So with that, that's the invocation. We'll move now to, if you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I do want to be noted that we do have a quorum tonight. Mayor Pro Tem Dozier will be attending, will not be voting tonight, but she will be in attendance of the meeting. All right. So we'll now move to our first presentation for tonight. Keith Joyce of Joyce & Company, independent auditor, presentation for the audit report for June 30th, 2020. So if you would come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Pleased to be with you again here tonight. You'd like to excuse my voice talking through the mask. I hope it doesn't dry out too quick and hope this is a one-year event for all of us. But you have 3 documents in your packet that I'm going to try to go over with you real briefly. The first of those is the Town of Apex Audit Highlights. It's an Excel type worksheet that you've got that has just some of the major numbers from this year's audit findings or audited report. Your CAFRA, I think you also had that in your agenda packet for tonight, is roughly a 150-page document. We tried to boil that down into about a half a page. So anything else that you have questions about, I'll be more than happy to try to answer. Of course, staff is always available as well. To start out at the very top of this, cash balances for the year, in most cases, increased from last year for a couple of reasons I'll come back to in a second. But you'll see that your total cash balance increased from $157 million the prior year to $196 million the current year. The main underlying reason that, other than having still a reasonably good year with the COVID effects and so forth, but we had a lot of bonds that were issued this year, and a lot of those bonds have not been expended as of year end. Going into fixed assets, net of depreciation, you'll see your governmental fund fixed assets increased by roughly $49 million from $477 million in the prior year to $526 million in the current year. Water sewer fixed assets, capital assets increased by roughly $10 million from $238 million in the prior year to $248 million. And electric capital assets increased by $5 million from $40 million to $45 million. These are your utility lines, water and sewer, the plants. In the general fund, the major items are your streets, highways, and the underlying easements behind those is what comprises a big part of these numbers. Looking more at the general fund, you'll see your total fund balance increased by $2.4 million from the prior year to $42.3 million. Your unassigned fund balance also increased by $2.8 million from $26 million in the prior year to $28.9 million. And your net change in fund balance was that same $2,430,000. Your unassigned fund balance as a percentage of expenditures for the current year was 47.4%. Your total fund balance was 69.3. Both of those are very positive numbers and meet the town's policy for fund balance. Your water and sewer fund. Cash balances in the water and sewer fund did decrease by roughly $7 million from $68 million the prior year to $61 million at the current. The main underlying factor there was the settlement of the lawsuit from the prior year end. That amount was accrued at June 30th of 2019. It was actually paid out in October and November of the current year. Your change in cash balance is once again $7 million. Your total net position in the water and sewer fund increased by almost $21 million to $257 million. A large part of that is contributed capital, water sewer lines, and the underlying easements that were contributed by developers and ongoing projects. And your change in that position was $20,661,000. The electric fund. The electric fund cash balances increased by $8.8 million to $18,720,000 at the end of the year. Once again, there were electric fund bonds issued during the current year of $10 million, and that was a large part of that increase. The total net position increased $3.2 million to $51.7 million at the current year, and change in net position was $3.2 million, which was an increase, of course. Just one thing to point out, in both the water, sewer, and electric funds, as well as the general fund, when you look at net position, the vast majority of the net position in each of those funds are not liquid assets that you can expend. The total net position in the water and sewer fund, for example, $257 million, a little over $200 million of that is your capital assets, net of long-term debt. So those are assets that you need to provide services to the town, but they can't be spent, in other words. Same situation in the electric fund, $51.7 million in total net position, $38.5 million of that is in capital assets at the end of the year, net of long-term debt. Your ad valorem taxes. Tax collections for the year were up $3.1 million from the prior year to $32,620,000. Your total valuation subject to tax, and this is prior to the revaluation, increased by $778 million to $7,860 million. Your overall collection percentage stayed very similar to prior year at a good level. You went from 99.9% overall collection percentage in the prior year to 99.8% in the current year. And you'll see down at the bottom of the long-term debt, your general government debt went up by $30 million. You actually issued $36.8 million of bonds in the current year, and you have a total of $46 million that's unexpended in your governmental bonds today. And those will be spent on future projects, obviously. Your water and sewer decreased by $2.5 million, and your electric debt, increased by $9.5. Once again, that was the $10 million in electric bonds that you issued during the current year. Your net OPEB liability, something we started disclosing about 3 or 4 years ago, increased by $7.5 million. The current net OPEB liability is $41.2 million. Just some other items at the very bottom. Your audit opinion was a clean. It means that the financial statements present fairly in all material aspects the financial position of the town and its operation and cash flows for the current year. The town was awarded the Certificate of Excellence by the GFOA for the June 30th, 2019 CAFRA. This is a nationwide award that is given to 12 to 14% of the towns in any given year. Last year was the 26th year that Apex has received this award in a row, and this year's CAFRA will also be submitted for that. And as I should have mentioned there at the beginning, each of the numbers in this presentation I've rounded to the nearest $1,000. To skip on over, I think you have this separate document in your packet with a schedule of audit findings and question cost. We did have one finding in the audit this year. There are 3 different levels of findings. You have a management letter, which is the least severe. A significant deficiency is sort of the interim level, and a material weakness. There is no management letter. There are no material weaknesses, but we do have one significant deficiency. This was very similar to the one that we had in the prior year. The underlying circumstances were not exactly the same, but many of them were very similar also. And a lot of this can be contributed to COVID, just like everything else in the current year. But the finding was the condition, excuse my voice, there were instances where invoices were not recorded in a timely manner, where accounts were not fully reconciled, and where adjustments were not recorded in a timely manner. Basically, this was caused by a lack of complete review of monthly and year-end financial statements, subledgers, and account reconciliations by staff. A lot of these were delayed by the fact that you had staff that were working off-site, staff that were not here full-time or could not get the documents. Some of these were caused, at least in part, not by staff or anything the town did directly, but by some of your vendors. There was some problems in getting some of the documents in a timely manner from some of your vendors along the year, because their staff were having the same issues as everybody else. But that was the one finding. The final document that I had was on our letterhead. It's just what's called a governance letter. In all honesty, there's not a lot of meat to this letter. It just tells you that there were no problems in performing the audit. That staff gave us everything that we needed. It was very helpful. We appreciate their help as always. And there were no accounting standard changes that came into play during the current fiscal year.
You said there were or there were not?
There were not. Any questions that I could help you with?
I just have one.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you expect that most governing bodies will have the same deficiency that you found with us, with the issues with COVID going on? And so
Well, not exactly. I mean, it is contributed in just about every circumstance, but every town is different. And the towns that we audit, in all honesty, their COVID response, whether it be right or wrong, has been very different. Every town that we've got. We've audited some towns. I can't really tell you that they've changed their operations at all, other than most of the staff are wearing masks when they're on site. We have a couple of towns that basically haven't had anybody in their office in months, except for special events or some particular situation to pick up mail, and they were the only person there. So there's a very, very wide variety.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Joyce? Thank you so much.
Thank you as always. Have a good day.
That was the last presentation. We'll now move to our consent agenda. All consent agenda items are considered routine to be enacted by one motion with the adoption of the consent agenda and without discussion. If a council member requests discussion of an item, the item may be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. We do have one change, consent 7, change the hearing date from January 12th to January 26th. And then we also have consent add-on the COVID leave policy. So with those changes and that one add-on, do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion, Ms. Killingsworth, to approve.
Okay.
Second, Gant.
All right, discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. We now move to setting of our regular meeting agenda. The agenda is presented to you. Any changes to the agenda by any of the council members? If not, I'll accept the motion to set the regular meeting agenda.
Motion to approve, Mahaffey.
Okay.
Second, Killingsworth.
Okay. Discussion?
Oh, wait.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, we have a set. Is that someone calling in? Okay, we have a set meeting agenda. All right. We'll now move to our public forum. This is an opportunity for public comment. We do value and welcome comments from our community. It's very important that we have a healthy, engaged community, and we want to make sure that all concerns are presented and we're serving our community members to the best of our ability. So you have 3 minutes to speak tonight. There is a series of lights right in front of you, green, yellow, and red. So yellow is a warning. Red is your time to come in for a landing. It's time to close out your comments. So we'll go ahead and get started with the first, open it up. And Nikolai, if you would come up, please. If you would give us your name and your address, please.
Can you hear me? Or should I take my mask off?
We can hear you.
You can hear, okay. Thank you. 1 second. My name is Nicole Branchev from Peak of the Vine. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor, team members, for hearing me out. I'm here in order to have say something about our business that's been apparently in an eye of every council or member of the towns, from the police to neighborhoods and stuff like that. So first I'd like to discuss what our business model is in general and what we do, so in that will tell us more about, my wife will come and speak with other stuff as well. So our business model is a wine shop, which is unique to any other different wine shops. Most of our business is a retail, over 60%. We have over 150 wine club members, and that's what the wine shop it is. But those 60% in that small town with less parking, with less food trafficking, I can't compete with Total Wine or any other big corporations. For that reason, we're bringing what our laws and rules allow to consumption on site with beer and wine, of course, and wine tastings and wine pairings. And that being said, we try to be more creative about things that we do in town of Apex and be more vibrant to downtown Apex in general, because as far as I understand, the things that we've done so far in the past 4 years are perfectly normal in the rules, and the town of Apex wants us to bring some more revenue and more people to the town of Apex and become more vibrant. All of a sudden, in the past week, we have all those schedules of what they call the events being stopped by the town of Apex or the police or whatnot, and everything comes down to nick and picking, because during those times of COVID, we're trying to survive somehow, and at the same time we've been pointed as a bad dog or not wanted or not anything. So by that we had to move things outside, and that's what created a lot of stuff. Now we don't understand why all of a sudden we have to go through little permits for this, little permits for that, little permits for this. In the long run, if it's not COVID on, we understand that, and that's why we never done it before. But because of COVID, we had to do all that, and that's what comes down, you know. We have other examples that we can say. Doherty's, they have tents outside, they don't need permit because on the landlord property, which is our tents on landlord property. Now we have to have a permit for that, we have to have a permit for this. It's just harassment all around, and we feel like we are like we're facing the barrel of the gun. Sorry.
Thank you, sir.
Oops.
All right. Our next speaker tonight is Wendell. Is that right? Okay. So it's like a W. I'm sorry. Michelle. Sorry about that. And if you would give us your full name, please, and your address.
Hi, my name is Michelle Phoenix. We're at 301 North Salem Street.
Thank you.
Hi. So thank you for having us today. I just want to speak to you about how I'm the music coordinator and event coordinator for our business, so I'm the bad one here. We've been having music at our place for 4 years now. We've been a vibrancy to this town where people have thanked me for the good music that we provide, for being able to go out to dinner and come to our place afterwards. And they tell me all the time, like, thank you, like that's our favorite thing to do, is to go to Scratch or to go to Provincial and come to your place and have a glass of wine and listen to music. And we were forced to move out of our old place to this new place because we were successful and they didn't like it. And we're successful here, but we had to put in all my personal credit cards, everything to be able to be where we're at right now because we had the old place. So now we're forced because of COVID to be outside, and we are asking to be able to have music and outdoor seating, which the town wanted us to do. So we provided this beautiful place for people to come to, and these beautiful lights, and to be able to still meet with people and sit outside and listen to music and enjoy wine. And we are creating revenue for the town. We support other businesses for people to bring food from businesses, the restaurants, to our venue. Like, we've always supported people to bring outside food. So we feel like we're bringing revenue and we're supporting the town of Apex, and we're being attacked and harassed and called 30 times in a night, having cops come to our place. And, it looks bad on our business that we're trying to exist through these tough times. So we're just asking for solo, duo before 10 o'clock on a Friday, Saturday night. That's it. Within the limits of the decibels during this time until we're allowed to go back inside. And we love the town of Apex, and like having Santa Claus on Saturday, like we're bringing the community, people from the community into our place to be able to have an event outside and to see the kids to see Santa Claus while bringing revenue to our place as well, because they couldn't see Santa Claus at the town chamber this year. And people love us. They move here for us. They tell us all the time, we moved here, you're our final straw. We moved here because of you guys. And we just ask to stop being attacked during this time and to be able to have outdoor seating and music on Fridays and Saturdays. We're not trying to hurt anybody, to harm anyone. We're just trying to exist and create a place for people to come to. We have towns like Cary and other places that have all these restaurants and vibrancy right now. Like they're busy, and by us existing and providing these music events and other events at our venue invites people to buy retail and at retail places and to go to restaurants. So.
I'm sorry, what happened?
Huh?
You were past your time, so.
I'm past? Okay.
But thank you so much for bringing your comments forward, and we have staff to work with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Yep. All right, next, Elvis Greer, if you would please come up.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. I have a simple visual, if that helps, or
I'm sorry, say again.
a visual, if that would help at all, or yeah. So Elvis Greer, 3428 Willow Green Drive. I'm a designated speaker on behalf of the Stillwater community between Richardson and Reagan Road. And I'm here today to simply ask that a Greenway project be placed and prioritized for the coming 2021 budget. And I think there's many reasons why this should be prioritized. First and foremost, I may have emailed most of you a month ago or so, and as of today, there's about 332 signatures that I've collected on an online petition. And what we're asking for is that there is at the end of Reagan Road, there is a space of about 100 to 200 yards that is surrounded by private property as well as Army Corps of Engineers. And it's a clear path to the American Tobacco Trail. And so what we're really asking for is, number one, to give legal permission to actually cross through that area, which obviously would require an easement. And then the second piece would be, I imagine, just actually clearing some debris. So if this were a phased project, the capital expenses would be relatively low, I imagine, as well as the operational and logistical expense that would be required for such a project. And so I just wanted to bring that up to let you know that there is not only the majority of our community, but also the surrounding communities that are joining with us in support of this effort, in hopes that we could at least, again, just receive the legal permission, or the town could receive legal permission, as well as clear the way for us to have a safe walking path. Because to date, there is actually no physical way to actually have a safe walk around our neighborhood, given there's actually no walkways or greenways for the majority of Richardson Road, Hume Olive, or Reagan Road. So this would actually be a great additional benefit, providing safe access for families in our neighborhood as well as the surrounding neighborhoods to enjoy the American Tobacco Trail. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Your comments tonight. Juan Ortega.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Town Council members, my name is Juan Ortega. I have a business in downtown. It's 108 North Salem Street. It's called Sophie and Molly's Boutique. Own it with my wife. I came here in support of Peak of the Vine and their two owners. I'm a patron, I'm a friend, and I'm a co-business owner with them. Downtown Apex has been through some hard times this year. We're here, we've survived, and I want to say that Downtown Apex, its history is music. We have a festival called the Music Festival, Apex Jazz Festival, every year. And local bands from around the state and the country come to support and play and get paid and just do their music. Music venues and concerts has stopped all across the country. The only thing they have right now is small places like Peak of the Vine or some other small place to play their music and have their music be liked and have some kind of reception. In addition, Downtown Apex has been in the news the last 3 weeks. In fact, they came out, the owners of Peak of the Vine, they were interviewed on WRL on Saturday about the creative things that they're trying to do to stay alive. And that interview and that segment was amazing because they interviewed them, they interviewed Scratch, and they showed the winter wonderland that Peak of the Vine has done in the back part, full of white lights, a wine garden, and music playing, somebody playing a guitar. And for them to be harassed by the police, by the town, by the alcohol bureaus is unacceptable. Anybody who's harassing them doesn't have a conscience. And I, as a friend, as a patron, and as a business owner, I'm upset that this continues to happen in downtown Apex where we don't get support from the community. I know there's support here, but the community out there has some grudge against downtown Apex. And WRL and the News and Observer all have come to interview us. They were in our store, they were in Peak of the Vine, and they're all asking, what are you guys doing to survive? This is what we're doing to survive. Music, outside, online shopping, communication, marketing. So we're asking for your support. We're asking you to fight for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ortega. Lori Nelson.
I also have some copies to give. Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Lori Nelson. I'm at 1003 Black Oak Court, and I have lived in Apex in the Brookfield subdivision since 2005. My neighborhood is a very close-knit group of families. In fact, one of my neighbors called on me for support on Father's Day. They needed help de-escalating a matter. I was happy to help because we all step in when we need each other. On December 3rd, my holiday card, which is on page 1 of your pamphlet, arrived at that same neighbor's house. I quickly received a text message from him letting me know exactly what he thought of the card that included a photo of a local Black Lives Matter protest. A card I thought would bring some joy ended up bringing me a brand new awareness of my community. You see, that neighbor is David Swope, a local Apex law enforcement officer. As you can read on page 2, his text message was angry. He questioned my ability to understand Black Lives Matter movement because of my socioeconomic status and my race. He informed me that he was only, quote, tolerating me and other neighbors who had similar signs in their yard. and he let me know that he sees those signs as a direct slap in his face. I was left wondering what happens when his tolerance runs out. What happens when black members of our community engage with him when he is on duty? Why is he unable to de-escalate situations or even control his own anger over a photo on a holiday card? Yet I'm left to believe that he has adequate training to do so on the job. What happens when those of us who display these signs in our yard have black children? Does having my Black Lives Matter sign sticker on my vehicle mean I'll be a target for other officers who feel the same way? I was hopeful that these sentiments would not be echoed by the APD. I went to report my concerns about a police officer. Unfortunately, after that meeting with Officer McKinney, I realized that this was not about one officer. Instead, it was a pattern that raises concerns about the APD. My notes from the interaction can be found on pages 5 through 7. Officer McKinney, though polite, left me questioning myself. Any member of this community should be able to walk into the police department, feel heard and safe, and I felt neither. Officer McKinney said to me, Dave and his wife were really upset when they got this card. I am not, but Dave is. This immediately left me feeling that my card had already been discussed and this situation would not be taken seriously. Following the disturbing communication from the officer, the inadequate response from Officer McKinney, I would like to formally request a cultural assessment of the APD be initiated immediately. As we prepare for a new chief of police, such an assessment is warranted to understand the current diversity, equity, and inclusion issues within the police department and to ensure that we hire a police chief who will help create a department of dignity and respect for all of the culturally diverse members of our community. I believe this is the first step, and it can lead us to developing a police advisory board where residents and officers all have a safe place to share their concerns.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nelson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our public forum tonight. We'll now move to public hearings. And we have public hearing 1. It's going to be our Assistant Town Manager, Sean Purvis.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, members of council. So Joanna's a little under the weather, so I'm going to handle this public hearing for her this evening. So this public hearing is for the Cash Corporate Center, similar to 2 weeks ago. This is a second property, so not the same one that we are looking to sell. The council has already provided for the purchase of the property back in October at your first October meeting on October 6th. The site is, I'll orient you again. So again, here's, you have the Cash Corporate Center, and here's 55 Williams, and then Pristine Pinnacle Park, and one's up here. So on the site, so there's the site we discussed last time. Ms. Killingsworth, the yellow looks a lot better when you got blue next to it. And so this site is 26 acres. It would be, and I'll move on to the numbers for the public hearing. So it's 26 acres. You can see, and the access to this site is off of Burma Drive. Whoops, I'm sorry. Which is right here. So this one's Burma. Production was the other site. From an economic development standpoint, Project Delta, which is this project's name, it's a distribution and office project, looking at 300,000 square feet of building, 220 new jobs, and $25 million in investment, roughly. So it's a good number of jobs and investment for the project, which is why we're looking to sell the property to them. When you conduct the public hearing, just know that it is about 26 acres to sell for the project, and it's $75,210 per acre, and that was per the most recent assessment that was done on the property. So this time I'll answer any questions you have, and otherwise turn it over to you for the public hearing and
any questions, discussion.
Just, Mr. Purvis, I know Project Protein was very excited to move quickly. How about Project Delta? Do you have a sense about their
roughly within a very similar timeline? They'll be right behind them. So the Project Protein was looking to close now within the next 45, 60 days, and it's going to be very similar for Project Delta. So,
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I will now open up a public hearing for this item. No one has signed up to speak tonight. There are no recorded comments, therefore I close public hearing, and the matter goes back to council for further discussion, leading to a possible motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve Stallings.
Okay.
Second, Gant.
All right, discussion?
I'm just happy to see this happening, and it feels like there's a lot of energy built up and now it's starting to roll, so that's really nice. So kudos to Joanna and staff for getting this set up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's exciting to see all this activity around the Cash Corporate Center after so much work's been put in the past couple of years. It's very exciting.
All right, any other comments? All right, we'll now take a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. We now move to public hearing number 2. And again, we're going to Miss Amanda.
We both will.
Okay, got a duo here, okay?
You've got it. I'll answer any questions.
All right, great.
So this is just a pre-budget public hearing that we typically started hosting about, I think, 3 years ago, if that's correct. And so this gives the public the opportunity to provide some feedback before we start developing the budget as opposed to after we get started. So we'll still host our regular public hearing in May as well. One thing that we did want to go ahead and kind of debut with you all is the public participation and prioritization tool. If I can type on this, I've been working from home too long. Maybe not.
We have access, Mike.
I know. I think that's because he was trying to work on something. Maybe not. Yes. Maybe it's just me doing it?
Just required the magic touch.
So on our homepage, we actually have got it posted. So it has gone out on social media as well. And then we'll be pushing this through to all of our exterior committees and the staff liaisons there to try and get as much engagement as possible. So on the homepage, if you go to the homepage, it will carry you to budget. And this survey kind of goes through 7 different categories. So it's got recreational and cultural opportunities, transportation infrastructure, environmental sustainability, economic sustainability and growth, housing affordability, public safety, vibrant and accessible downtown. And as you go through each one of these, you get to choose how important they are to you, whether they're not important or they're very important. And then moving to the next step of the tool, you can rank some of these different priorities. So we'll be able to get this data and be able to analyze this data and provide this back to you all. So it does close on February 5th, and so we'll be able to do some analysis and provide a report back to you on the public feedback that we've received thus far.
Okay.
So are the categories, it's hard to see it, are they kind of, they're broad, they're not specific projects, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, but this will allow you to rank kind of some of those different things. So recreation and cultural opportunities, it's new park and greenway construction and completion of existing greenway connections, maintenance and renovation of current parks, recreation facilities, and greenways, additional enhanced athletic programming, additional enhanced cultural arts program, and then none of these are important. So if you said none of them are important on the sliding scale on the first part, the second part you can say, hey, none of these are important to me.
Does it ask you where you live in Apex, somewhere on the thing?
It will be, on step 4, some demographic information. We'll be able to determine whether or not they live within town limits based on an IP address.
Okay.
So where they take the survey from.
Okay.
Can you remind us and remind the public, what's the rough calendar look like for the budget process coming up?
So we've got CIP going on now. February 12th is you all's retreat. Your strategic planning session will be in January. Our public hearing will be in May, but we've got workshop in April. Do you remember the date off the top of your head?
Second week of April, though, it's around the 14th or so, somewhere around there. But, leading up to that point, you have your retreat, like she mentioned, and you have your CIP workshop. As soon as we get back from the holidays, Amanda and her team will get out the budget workshops, each of the budget worksheets to each department, and they'll begin compiling those. So by March 1st, we start having everything together and trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. So the next 2 months we'll be collecting all the pieces, and then we'll try and connect everything in March. And that's when we have your committee meetings, Finance Committee, MVP, Personnel Committee, that sort of thing. And then by 1st of April, you'll have that draft for the first round of numbers to kind of see where we are. So that April workshop, we'll start really hashing through where what you want to see in the budget with the feedback.
Did you just say roughly April 1st, we'd have the first draft of the budget?
Yes.
The public would have the first draft of the budget?
Yes.
And we'd approve that by probably our second meeting in June?
Yes.
First meeting in June?
Yep.
You have to, certainly.
Yeah.
Have to by the second?
Yeah.
Be on our agenda for the first?
The goal will be for it to be on the first meeting in June.
Right, thank you.
So with that survey, I think that's really nice that's there now. I think hopefully a lot of people will take it. So the email on here and the public hearing would you kind of suggest that the email be used for like specific projects now?
For specific projects or feedback that they want to provide.
And prioritization is probably better used with that survey, probably better voiced through that survey. Okay. And that email address, how long will you guys be answering or monitoring it?
So we monitor it every year.
Year-round.
We don't ever stop monitoring. It's just annual budget at apexnc.org.
Okay. But if they want to have some kind of impact on the budget, is there a certain timeline with which they should use that email address?
I'd say responses by February, we can include it in a report to you, but we respond to the emails throughout the year.
Yeah, we take it, year-round, but it's part of this budget process. I mean, knowing that, come 1st of April, we're hoping to have our draft. I mean, you certainly want to make that by then, but in February, we're trying to really put pieces together. So that would, at that point, it works best if we've got input. But we get your input year-round. I will say, we get a few emails typically about this time. We'll get 1 or 2 responses from this meeting. And then most of the responses usually come in June after the budget's been adopted. And it's usually in response to the budget. And it's not necessarily always what you think, where it's someone being critical of it. Sometimes it's like, hey, I'm glad to see this in it. And other times it's, hey, we know for this coming year, we'd like to see this, that sort of thing. So it's been a good tool to have year-round. And it comes directly to Amanda, so we see those comments.
Okay.
And we try and forward those on to you when needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll go ahead and open up public hearing for this item. No one has signed up to speak tonight. We'll close public hearing and the matters back to council for discussion, leading to a possible motion. We don't need a motion for this. We're good. That's just information only. Okay.
Right, this is just to get comments if there are any.
Can I provide a little side? When I was, before I was joined this council, my neighbors and I used that email address around January or December of one year to request a project that is now built and is now, a sidewalk near our neighborhood. So I would encourage everyone, if they have specific things in mind near their neighborhood, or not even near their neighborhood, anywhere in Apex, I think it can be a useful tool to get something that you want that it's a big need for the community. So I'd highly encourage everybody to use that email.
Yeah, and to add on to that, like, it strikes me as, this is, the moment that a citizen has here is where you can have the most impact. Like, we talk a lot about how you vote in the national election and your vote's one of, 300 some odd million. You vote in a local election, it's so important because you're one of 60,000. Like here, so few people get involved in this process. It's not like we're getting thousands of emails, So the impact you can have by advocating for a certain project is enormous compared to, what you'd usually expect from just voting in an election. So I hope people use it this year.
Any other comments? Okay. All right, we'll move on to public hearing 3, and presented by Diane King, Director of Planning and Community Development.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So this is one that's going to be a long time coming. So it's Colby Crossing. Just to orient you to what's going on to the site, it is in our far southeastern corner. This was a subdivision that was approved previously, and as part of the next PUD that will be requested to be annexed, the same developer did both of these, and they promised to not open Colby Chase Drive to the Marion subdivision until the north-south collector street is constructed and open to the public. And so that's a zoning condition of Horton Park PUD. But I wanted to mention that because we had the neighbors come out several times to discuss this connection. So they are requesting to annex it. That would be so that they can get public water and sewer. Staff does recommend approval.
Any questions for Ms. Kim? All right. Thank you. I'll open up public hearing for this item. No one has signed up to speak. I'll close public hearing. The matter is back to council for discussion.
I make a motion to approve.
All right.
Killingsworth,
Stallings,
second.
Sorry.
All right. Motion approved. Stallings. Second, Killingsworth. Any discussion on it further? All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right. That passed unanimously. We'll move on to public hearing 4.
All right, so this is the Horton Park PUD annexation. It's in a similar location, and it is a sprawling PUD. It connects from Colby Crossing all the way up to Jesse Drive. They are requesting the annexation in order to get public water and sewer. And again, this is the PUD that has this condition, so that road will not be open until the north-south collector street is open, and that would connect from Colby Chase Drive up to Jesse Drive. Staff does recommend approval of the annexation.
Okay. Questions? All right. Open up public hearing for this item. No one has signed up to speak. I'll close public hearing. This matters back to council.
Motion approved, Gant.
Second, Mahaffey.
All right. Motion second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right. That passed unanimously.
All right, and this one is for MCI Business Park. This is located in the same general vicinity. It's on East William Street next to the future 540 corridor right there. And they are asking for annexation in order to get public water and sewer. This is a Tech Flex Business Park.
Okay.
Staff does recommend approval.
Questions?
I make a motion to approve Stallings.
Let me open it up first.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Actually, I have a quick question for her. Sorry to interrupt the process. So this one just got me thinking, because it looked kind of like an industrial area, and any kind of remediation that would be required. The annexation has nothing to do with anything that would be required that way, right?
No.
We wouldn't be on the hook for anything in like 20 years, 30 years, because we're doing this now, right?
No, the private property owner has responsibility for any environmental things that are going on in their property.
Okay. Not that there are, right?
Yeah, no, it's actually, that area was residential previously.
Okay.
Yeah, their current business has the properties here, and they've picked up additional residential properties. And I think one was actually used as a church at one time.
Okay. That's it, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll open up public hearing, close public hearing. The floor is yours, Ms. Stallings.
I make a motion to approve Stallings.
All right.
Second, Killingsworth.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. Public hearing 6.
Okay, I'm not, is Shelley on here? Came in and out. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what's going on. So this is a public hearing and possible motion to approve the 2020 Annual Hazard Mitigation Action Plan update. I'll just start because it's all on the slide anyway. Is she coming? Well, basically, there's 2 federal acts that require us to have these updates in order to qualify for hazard.
I was almost in here and I realized I left my mask on my desk. So. Thank you, Diane. So in order to be able, as Diane was saying, there are two major federal acts that govern hazard mitigation plans. In order for state and local governments to be eligible for federal money, we have to adopt and develop these hazard mitigation plans. This is a process to identify the risks and vulnerabilities associated with natural disasters and to try to develop long-term strategies for protecting our population and our property from these hazard events. 1 year ago, I came in here and we reviewed the updated Wake County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. It recommends an annual update, just kind of giving an idea of our progress on our mitigation action plan. And this just makes sure that all of our goals and objectives and the things that we have in the plan are continuing to address our current situation. Now, there is absolutely no way that one person can do all of this. It's a group project. It takes a lot of input from a lot of different departments and a lot of different people. The people on this list all contributed their time, their expertise, and their input to helping to make sure that this action plan actually reflects things that the town has as projects and concerns that we need to be aware of. So I may be presenting it, but I'm not the only person who worked on this thing. I'm just going to go through the list, some of the 50 items on the action plan. You all have a copy of it in your staff report. It's a nice big 2 pages long of time to consolidate this. First one is the items that we completed this year. This one's really exciting to me. The White Oak Creek Greenway has been something we've been working on for years. The entire time that I've been here at the town of Apex, 7 years, we've been working on this thing, and it got completed this year. This is a huge benefit for us as far as flood mitigation goes, and also evacuation. People don't think about it, but if you have a small local emergency happen, a gas main gets ruptured in your neighborhood. It's not big enough to evacuate the town. You're not going to see it on the local news necessarily, but you might need to get everybody a half mile away from where that happens. That can completely block up the roads in your neighborhood, so having the greenway to let you walk out, give you that additional access point, is a great way to get that local evacuation going as an alternative. It's also one that elderly people, people without cars, kids can all access instead of having to use the road system. We've also added 3 new items this year. We've separated out constructing public safety station 6 and 7. 6 is currently being designed. It's expected to be submitted for review in January. 7 we're still looking for land for. And then in the next few years, DOT will be widening NC 55, which will basically blow out the existing fire administration building. So we'll have to do some shuffling and some improvements to relocate for that. We also have a lot of items that are labeled as continuing, ongoing. Those won't be discussed here. Instead, I've got the items that have a concrete ending point, that are things that we can look at and say, this will be built and in the ground or approved and done at a certain time. So these are the items that are in progress. They're going to be carried forward on the plan, but they're in progress at the moment. We've got 3 more greenways. Beaver Creek Greenway is going through permitting now. Middle Creek Greenway is showing up on several plans and is currently under construction in pieces. And then Apex West Greenway is in design as we're speaking. Parts of it are. We're also working to relocate the Beaver Creek sewer line out of the creek. That's under construction at the moment. You don't really think about sewer line improvements as hazard mitigation. Most of the time when people think about floodwaters, they think about having to leave their houses, their cars getting stuck or getting pulled in, debris floating everywhere. You don't think about the stuff in the water. Nobody wants a tree floating downstream to hit that sewer pipe.
or a branch covered in ice to do the same thing. And for that stuff to get mixed in with this stuff that's getting into your house. So this is actually a really big one as far as the health and benefit of the town goes, is to make sure that we don't have any major illnesses caused by it. Two more really...
Do you know the history of why was that wasn't even necessary? Is it just a bad place to put it to begin with, or?
So I've had a couple of conversations on this, but I don't have the full background. What I can tell you is that I've been told when it was built the first time around, the ground, we thought that the ground was firmed up enough, was compacted enough underneath of it, and just over the years, and it's been some time, the erosion from the creek and from storms has just kind of washed that out.
Okay.
And has just made it so that it's exposed now. So they're basically, to some degree, the creek bed shifted course, just like it will naturally do over time. And so it just has to be shifted further out of the creek bed. My understanding is they're moving it much further out of the creek bed so that we don't have to worry about that again. We've also got 2 sections of the Peakway Loop that are currently under design and review. Construction is yet to happen, of course, but that's still something that we're making progress on. This will be a huge benefit as far as that increased connectivity, faster emergency response times, and a faster and safer evacuation for people all across the town. We're updating the UDO and the Design Development Manual to incorporate plant species selection, better plant species selection, and more updated practices for planting and maintenance. It hasn't been updated in 10 years, and it's something that we're working hard on. We're hoping to have that done by the end of the year. And then police and fire and our IT departments have all been making huge strides working together on improving our communication abilities. We've got more fiber optic internet infrastructure between us and the various departments. Headquarters for each of those is what I was trying to say. And then they're also replacing and updating the current radio systems, and that's something we've been working with Wake County, and I think Morrisville as well, to help out with. So that's going to be a big deal as well. We're hoping that they've completed a lot of smaller projects, but that's going to be ongoing for the next 3 or 4 years. That is all I have for you. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Quick question. Can you speak to how this document and that the chart in here and what you've just shown us, how that influences and informs the CIP decisions that we make?
A lot of these items actually come from the CIP. They were either pulled directly out of the last version of it that we had access to, or are projects that we were made aware of that we're trying to either get on the CIP or that we anticipated needing to do. As far as informing the CIP, I'm not a part of the CIP creation process, so I'm not honestly very familiar with that, but I do know that we try to get important big projects like this listed on as many different documents as possible, partly because if we're looking for federal or state money, showing that we're actually serious about them by listing them in these various different documents increases the likelihood that we'll get those funds.
I guess my thought is that it is a very useful and informative document. I think it'd be interesting as we do our CIP prioritization process, because this isn't a complete list of our CIP, right? This is a subset. Having, even if it's just like a little star next to them, say, hey, this is important for the hazard mitigation plan. We can consider that as we're doing the prioritization. After.
So when the staff scores, so the staff internally scores all the CIP projects, this is one of the criteria they'll use if it hits a plan like this. It gets more points in their evaluation, and you all will see the staff scoring as part of your review process as well.
So you're saying it is incorporated, even though maybe you're not directly.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for Ms. Mann? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. I'll open public hearing for this item. No one is signed to speak tonight, so I'll close public hearing. Council, the matter is yours for discussion. To a possible motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve Killingsworth.
All right.
I second it, Stallings.
All right. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to chime in to say I really like doing this planning because, I think disasters oftentimes are not well predicted and not planned for very well. And so I think it's a useful, even though it's required, it's a useful process to go through. And I have some comfort thinking that whatever weather or whatever disasters come our way will be all right. Or not, as best as we can be, considering because of this plan and the work that goes into it.
Right.
Yeah, and not to harp on the point about the CIP, but things showing up here, it's something I think we undersell a little bit when we're trying to come to the public and explain why we need to spend, $5 million here or $20 million there. Providing hazard mitigations is something that should be, I think, a bigger topic of conversation. When we're weighing the benefits of that.
I just want to add again, our staff, I know it took a lot of coordination and getting this to work, so thank you for all your work on it. Excellent job. Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. All right, we'll move now to public hearing 7, presented tonight by Ms. Amanda Bunce. Remote.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to present a series of UDO amendments. For you, we have, there's 5 in total, and as usual, I'll pause after each one to see if you have any questions. Amendment is to the resource conservation area standards, specifically in order to reduce the ratio of off-site RCA to on-site RCA, and to amend the standards for the approval of off-site RCA. So there are current standards in place in the UDO, but if a site is unable to provide all of the RCA requirement on-site, there is this option to find land elsewhere to dedicate for resource conservation. And so one part of the proposal is to define the criteria for what types of lands can be considered off-site RCA, and it's a little bit more restrictive than what's allowed to count as on-site RCA. So for instance, with riparian buffers, zone 1, or the area closest to the stream, which already cannot be disturbed, is not allowed in this proposal to count as off-site RCA, nor can floodplains or preserved wetlands, as those would already be protected if, for instance, the site where this land is located would be developed by itself. It would already be protected anyway. And so that is a primary difference in the land that, the categories of land that can be included as off-site RCA from what would be allowed on-site. One distinction we are making is for on-site RCA, this first section would apply anywhere on site that there is a replanting plan if there's an unvegetated piece of land, for instance, an old horse farm, for example, that may be mostly cleared and doesn't have a lot of wooded areas. They can replant an area that's unvegetated in order to be counted as RCA. So for off-site RCA, the proposal is that within 50 feet of an adjacent property line or public right-of-way, that those same standards apply there. So there's more mature trees planted at the time it's designated as RCA, where it's visible from the public. Internal to the site, the proposal is to allow a reforestation plan that would include bare root seedlings to be used. So these are less expensive to install, they're easier to install, and over time could result still in a very well forested, healthy area. And so, and those seedlings would have to be planted during the months of October to December. So this would be a more affordable and make it a practical option for someone to use. And just a reminder, this standard is not proposing to change. This area shall be located within the Town of Apex's corporate limits or extraterritorial jurisdiction. The location of the offsite RCA, we are proposing to add one additional criteria, And the current options are that it's located adjacent to existing RCA, public parks, conservation easements, or that it's a minimum size of 2 acres and a minimum width of 30 feet. We are proposing that any land adjacent to a control of access highway with an average width of at least 30 feet be allowed. For instance, NCDOT has a lot of remnant properties, for instance, along 540, that they are now trying to sell. These properties were generally undisturbed while the road was being built. DOT just bought more land than they needed. And so as people are buying these, they're saying, well, what can I do? And they're having trouble developing them. And so this could be a way for these properties to be used and preserved, their tree canopies preserved. And then we are proposing a new standard that the area shall not be located within an existing public or private easement or within a future transportation or utility corridor as identified on our thoroughfare collector street plan, master sewer plan, or water system master plan. We want to ensure these off-site RCA areas can be preserved in perpetuity. For the ratio of off-site to RCA, currently you have to dedicate 1.5 times the amount you would normally provide on-site. The proposal is to change that so it's an equal amount, a 1-to-1 ratio, or less, 3/4 of the amount required on-site if it's adjacent to an existing or planned public park facility and the land is deeded to the town of Apex. The maximum reduction allowed is 50% currently, and that is not proposed to change. And then finally, the timing prior to the approval of master subdivision final plat or site plan final plat, the offsite RCA must either be deeded to the town of Apex or another qualified land management agency, or recorded as a conservation easement in favor of the state of North Carolina or another qualified land management agency. It became apparent to staff as we were talking to people about this and working on this, that there may be some areas that can't be deeded, sold to someone for offsite RCA is subdivided as a fee simple lot because it doesn't meet the subdivision standards of the ordinance or doesn't meet an exemption allowed by the state. So allowing that to be recorded as a conservation easement would provide flexibility there. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this item.
Any questions for Amanda?
Yeah, I have one, Amanda. We got an email today that kind of jogged some memory. We did this a little while ago, and I kind of forgot the details a little bit. We talked about non-ETJ areas that would be, in theory, under Apex's overall planning jurisdiction. I thought it was part of this discussion. Can you remind me how that went and what was discussed about that area?
Okay, so there was the conversation about allowing land outside of the ETJ or corporate limits to be counted as off-site RCA, but we can't include that in the UDO. Those lands are not in our jurisdiction, and we don't have control over planning, jurisdiction over those lands. And so the option in those cases would be that an off-site RCA dedication out of our planning jurisdiction or out of the ETJ and corporate limits could be done as a zoning condition. So as part of a rezoning for a potential development, the council could consider accepting a conservation easement, land being set aside basically according to these same off-site RCA standards, but it would be outside of our planning, ETJ and corporate limits. And we've worked on developing a map of lands that are within our drinking water watershed.
Right.
So lands that will be imported to Apex for preservation.
Okay, that's right.
Any other questions?
So how'd that work exactly? They would come with a zoning condition saying, as part of the zoning, we promise to go get a land dedicated as a conservation easement to the state would be the only option? They wouldn't be able to give it as a town RCA?
That's correct. They would have to provide an exhibit or a zoning condition that would basically their development would be tied to them showing proof of a conservation easement outside of our jurisdiction.
Do you know how long it takes to get a conservation easement submitted, approved, stamped with a letter from the state saying, here, we're done, that they could bring to a zoning?
I'm not certain of that timing, but another option is that it could be recorded in favor of another qualified land management agency, such as Triangle Land Conservancy or another
Just not us.
Correct.
Right. And this kind of, speed bump here is because we, as a town, haven't expanded our ETJ as aggressively as some other towns have in the area, so we don't technically have jurisdiction over a lot of the areas that we're planning for. Is that accurate?
It's been a long time since we've had an ETJ expansion, and most of our expansions have basically been annexations that have occurred as development has been occurring.
I'm curious as to what are the other reasons why we may or may not want to do an ETJ expansion. I mean, this is obviously only one thing, and I wouldn't want to start a huge process to reduce the friction here. But is there more here? Are there more things that have been come up about why it's inconvenient to not just do? Because looking at it from a high level, one wonders why we don't just do a single ETJ expansion to match our planning area and just be done with it. Other than I know that citizens in the area would be upset by that about, what I mean? But
So we actually requested ETJ expansion all the way to the county line in 2007, and it was not granted by the county. They felt that they should keep the critical watershed areas, and they felt that they should keep the arc around Sharon Harris. I don't believe that has changed. So that's why we don't go all the way out to the county line.
But if it were to have changed, we would be interested in doing the ETJ expansion. It would be convenient for us for other reasons to have our ETJ match our planning area.
There's actually reasons not to do that. There's actually benefits to making people annex before or as they get rezoned at the same time.
Okay.
So.
Can you share what that would be?
I would rather not, because I don't have the laundry list, but I'd be happy to bring it back to you all. There are many, many reasons we have found that ETJ is not particularly beneficial. We have a lot of zoning compliance issues with illegal businesses in our ETJ, but there's a whole list, and I'd be happy to bring them back to you. It's quite extensive.
It doesn't have to be here. I think it might be appropriate for a planning committee discussion.
I'd like to hear more.
Maybe. Or here, whatever you guys want, if everyone's interested, maybe. But I'm curious as to how our policy about our ETJ has been developed and what's going to be going forward, especially if something like this is probably going to come up again as to why we do or don't have this part of land in our ETJ.
I think that's kind of weedsy enough for the plan. I personally think it's weedsy enough for the planning committee rather than this whole body, and we can report out maybe if we need to.
You guys can come to the planning committee.
You can come, yeah. It gets pretty down the weeds, which I like, but yeah, that sounds like a deep topic.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Back to you, Amanda.
Okay, no other questions on this amendment? The next amendment is requested, and the next several were requested by staff. As part of our wayfinding program, we rediscovered a requirement in the UDO to post signs at our ETJ boundaries, and we don't believe that this is necessary. It's not a requirement of state law, and so we're just proposing to strike this language requiring the signage. Any questions on this one? The next amendment is to revise the types of rezoning applications that must be reviewed by the Environmental Advisory Board prior to submittal. And there are 4 types of exemptions that are being proposed. Rezonings to amend zoning conditions which have no environmental impact on a site, including but not limited to revisions to architectural standards, building height, setbacks, and uses. Rezonings to resolve nonconformities. Rezonings of 1 acre or less. And rezonings within the small town character overlay district. These amendments were reviewed with the Environmental Advisory Board last month, and they were 100% in agreement. Any questions on that amendment? Okay. The next amendment is to refine the definition of the government service use to include EMS station and transit stations as typical uses, which also include post offices, town buildings, police, fire stations. To clarify, transit stations, that does not include bus stops that are within the right-of-way. This would be something like a multimodal transfer station or a bus station on private property. And we are also proposing to amend the supplemental standards for this use to add screening requirements for government service uses with outdoor storage. So the amendment here requires that outdoor storage for this use comply with the standards for industrial uses found in section 4.1.2. It's primarily screening and location requirements. And also a minimum 40-foot type A buffer with an opaque fence at least 6 feet in height shall be provided along all outdoor storage areas adjacent to a conforming residential use or vacant land within a residential zoning district. Any questions on that amendment? Finally, this amendment actually was a direction that Water Resources staff received from you to refine the way that civil penalties would be assessed for violations of our of section 6.1, the Watershed Protection Overlay District. And we work with legal, so a lot of the language that's being added into this section is actually being, for lack of a better term, copy and pasted from our enforcement section in Article 11 to ensure that we have consistency and that it's understood that those same rules apply in this case. And so one of the primary change was in determining the amount of the penalty. And so these standards are being proposed, and they're similar to those used in the soil and erosion control violation standard. And so it incorporates the degree and extent of harm, the cost of rectifying the damage, including staff time, duration of the violation, the amount of money the violator would have saved by noncompliance, whether the violation was committed willfully, and the prior record of the violator. And so that is all could be considered by the Water Resources Director in determining the amount of the penalty. And again, this continuing violation language is similar to what currently exists in timing for rectifying a violation. And then one amendment in Article 11 stating that civil penalties pointing to this section lets you know that there are separate standards there. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this one. Okay, planning staff recommends approval, and planning board heard this at their meeting last night and unanimously recommended approval.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll open up public hearing for this item. No one has signed up to speak tonight. I'll close public hearing. It's back to you, council, for discussion. Lead to a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve Killingsworth.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I second it, Stallings.
Discussion.
I'm excited to see the RCA changes especially come across. This is something in the planning committee we've been talking about for most of the year, it feels like. There's a policy goal here behind this is, at least for me, I view the western part of Apex and the Jordan Lake watershed as having a finite amount of land left available. And the policy goal is to try to get the most valuable amount of that land conserved as possible. You know, and sometimes when you do a development, the part you buy doesn't have something as interesting to save for conservation as something closer to Jordan Lake. And in a convenient kind of arrangement, as you get closer to Jordan Lake and farther away from Apex, the land, I believe, gets cheaper, and the importance for conservation actually improves and increases, because the closer you are to the lake, the more important it is. So this is a step in that direction. I'm hoping to see some RCA swaps where people come with us with a bunch of land to the west that's important to conserve for us, and in exchange for some more land that they can develop. It's good for the environment, it's good for us, it's good for them. And I don't know if it'll actually happen. You know, it's something, this program's been around for a really long time, and as far as I know, no one's actually really done an RCA, offsite RCA swap before. So these changes are trying to make it easier. We had one a couple months ago where we got rid of the QJ hearings form as well to reduce some friction there. So I'm excited to see where this goes, and I'm willing to make further changes if we find ways to make it even easier to do. But that's where this is coming from.
Okay. Thank you.
And you forgot about the parkland too. I mean, I think land near parks is of ultra value to the town to be able to expand and do our parks a little differently and add fields or whatever we want to do. So it was trying to facilitate that a little bit too, as well as the environmental aspect of it.
Right.
So hopefully, I want to echo, like, I'd like to see this, what happens here. I don't know if anything will come of it, but it'll be neat to see, like, if there is something that comes before this board, that's council at some point that, like, utilizes this change and better land to develop gets developed, but then we get environmental or a park expansion as a result. I think that'd be a win-win for everybody.
Right. I mean, in my head, what's going to happen is, as parts of Apex get developed, people will start purchasing and conserving land further to the west, which will provide more and more of a buffer. And over time, over 20 years, it might build up to be something pretty significant. We can look back on this when we're older and far gone from this position and be proud of what happened here. So maybe, we'll see.
Very good.
I would just like to add, for all the work that everyone's doing, I really appreciate it. And I always like us to remember that work we're doing is tied to our strategic goals that, we worked hard to develop in January of this year. And I always keep this handout from, our retreat, because this environmental leadership and responsible development, that's one of our core strategic goals. And I think that speaks to that. So thank you all, staff, for working on that, and planning committee as well.
Very good. All right. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you, Amanda. All right, we now move to Old Business 1, presented by Vance Holloman, Finance Officer.
There we are.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Before you consider a amendment to the temporary ordinance suspending utility cutoffs, I'd like to present you with some updated information. I'd like to begin by updating some of the information on the cover sheet. We do have 2,083 accounts that are subject to disconnection. However, the balance of those accounts is $967,566. So the 1.4 million figure is quoted here, as you'll see in a minute on our updated slide here, is actually the past due amounts. But the amounts subject to disconnection are actually $967,566. As of today, 467 of those 2,083 customers have signed up for a payment plan. So just slightly under a fourth of the past due accounts, of these accounts subject to disconnection, have signed up for a payment plan. As why that might be such a low number, one is that we're not at this point in time cutting people off. So it's, I think it'll become a much more pressing matter for those in need at that time, and I'm sure we'll see that that number eventually exceed at least 1,000, if not more. And secondly, it's possible there may be some folks who have not paid who have perhaps were able to pay and just simply elected not to. But we do have only about a fourth of the folks who are subject to disconnection signing up. This slide, I apologize, it didn't get included in your presentation tonight, but I had made a presentation in September comparing where we stood June 30 and August 31. And I've now updated that as of November 30. The total past due accounts, you'll see that is that almost $1.5 million figure that was quoted in the cover sheet. That represents an increase of about $620,000 over where we stood at August 31. And the number of accounts, that's about 975 more than we had at August 31. So there has been, compared to the period of June to August, there has been more significant increases. Of course, I believe it's a month longer period, but the amounts have increased. Of course, the part of that probably is due to the fact that we have had larger bills with the winter months having come on. We do have a bit larger bills, I'm sure, than we did in the late summer, early fall period, but those have increased significantly, I would say. If you look at the percentage of our revenues, the past due amounts as a percentage of our revenues, got that broken down by fund. I will tell you this is for 9 months worth of revenues. So this is the March through the November revenues. So trying to get a comparison of those past due accounts to a percentage of those revenues. Those numbers have not changed dramatically. If you look at the electric fund, and all the funds really follow this pattern, it was higher in June than it was in August, and now again it's gone up a bit more in August. In November than it has rebounded a bit. In November, it's not as high as the numbers were in June. But the electric fund, it represents about 3.4% of their revenues. I think when we did some projections as to the ability of that fund to withstand, we used a number in that range. And we're on about target for that. The water is back up to about 2.5. It had gone down to 2.2. General fund, our various public works type charges, garbage, recycle, yard waste, things of that nature. We're collecting about 2.2% of those monies. And when you combine all the funds together, we're at 3%. Approximately 3% of our revenues are past due. The electric fund, as I said in September, we apply our payments to electric fund last. So I believe that explains why that is a larger number percentage-wise than any of the other funds. I've also learned, and many of you may be aware of this, but I've learned that the city of Raleigh, they intend to reinstate cutoffs effective January 31st, and also the town of Cary are planning also to re-implement cutoffs as of January 31st. If there's any additional information I could give you, I would be happy to. Any questions?
And our general fund balance is approximately?
The general fund, we've just added the 2.4 to that. I had that number with me earlier tonight. But we are, what is that number, Drew? 28.9, yeah. Yes, 28.9 unassigned. So we're in pretty good shape in that area. Yes, we are. That is a good, strong number.
Mr. Holloman, can you hear me okay? It's Nicole Dozier.
Yes, ma'am.
And I may have missed it in the packet, but do you have a sense of the average amount of the bill of people who are in arrears? And I just may not be able to see the screen well, but.
Well, we have we had that tiered out. I believe the average is running, Sean, is it correct, around 500?
It is for those that are subject to cutoff.
Yes.
Those that are just late, it's about
400. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So you're saying the average balances of those accounts are about $400 to $500?
Yes, ma'am.
And I was looking at the numbers of folks, just for the statewide, and from the data that I have, the average per customer, when this was last looked at, is $330. So sounds like, our folks are pretty similar to the people in North Carolina who most of them have due power out,
Yes, I think our number, including electric, would naturally be higher than the typical municipality that operates just water and sewer and public works type services.
Thank you.
So when you were last here, your comments and your report discussed municipal relief programs that can be organized in North Carolina.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit, refresh your memory about what that would look like and what's being done in that space around the area?
Well, Raleigh does have such a program, and Raleigh, of course, operates they don't have electric, but they do have a water and sewer system that serves a large number of municipalities. Now, they have a program that is just for their citizens now, that program, and it's been administered pretty much in the same way. And they have an arrangement with Wake County Human Services. The county will make the eligibility determination for them. They keep the money, and they move the money simply from one fund to the other to pay those bills. As I mentioned in September, you cannot use utility payments to finance this program. It has to be essentially general fund numbers. And also you can use donations if citizens or groups want to make donations to the program. They can do that also. I believe the city of Raleigh puts $200,000 annually for this type of service. The maximum amount anyone can get is $240. For them, that represents, and again, they're not electric, for them that represents maybe between 3 and 4 months of utilities. What occurs is the county administers a federal program, the Low Income Energy Assistance Program. And this kind of piggybacks that. And of course, that program is intended simply for the electric bills. But if they have adopted the same eligibility criteria as that program, and the county will, someone will go through the county. Typically, they'll be submitting an application for that program, and the county will then inform Raleigh, is this person also eligible for your program? Typically, they'll make the person aware when they come in and apply for the low-income energy grant. They'll make them aware of what the city of Raleigh will do. And if they are a customer who lives within the city limits of Raleigh, they are eligible. They are in-town customers. So someone, say, may have a Raleigh mailing address, but they are technically an out-of-town customer of Raleigh. They are not eligible for this program. It has to be an in-town customer. And they have that system. They have a very good relationship. I spoke with a couple of people from Raleigh yesterday. They have a very good relationship with Wake County. Wake County makes that determination for them at no additional charge. I think it's simply seen as an additional service that could be provided to these folks. And again, they're usually already in there for their electric bills through the Low Income Energy Assistance Program. And then a determination is made that they're also eligible for this. Typically, Raleigh will run out of money during the first 3 to 4 months of the year, because they'll only make it, for the first 3 months of the year of bills. And they have enough people coming in during that period of time that it exhausts the funds they have available in the first 3 or 4 months of the year.
Sounds like it would be worth establishing that relationship with Wake County Human Services to assist in this manner as well through the town of Apex.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of the areas where our citizens are being directly impacted by the current pandemic, and an area where we can directly provide assistance. And our policy thus far has been to generously not disconnect, which is, I think, a great policy. And but at the same time, we're continually reminded that statutorily we're required to collect these dollars from these people. We can't forgive utility debt. And in some sense, as that load gets higher, it becomes more difficult for these people to catch up. So what's the answer? How do we get back to a regular billing practice and help out the people who've built up these large debts? So in addition to everything you just said, I think that's great information. I'll add that there was a program through Wake County called Wake Helps, which was funded by federal dollars, CARES money. That program is now closed. It provided for $500 of utility assistance. You had to meet certain eligibility criteria. I'm not sure how it relates to the program that you're discussing with Raleigh, or who was used or what. But the point is, the crisis that we're looking at, suffering, we're looking at maybe more shutdowns. Who knows what's going to happen? This could get worse before it gets better. So I do think that we need to find a way to transition away from our current practice and start to provide that assistance to our customers, to our citizens. And I think the way I think about it in my mind, and what I'd like to discuss, is basically us kind of backstopping this Wake Helps program, which is expiring, with some sort of Apex Helps program to provide the same kind of level of assistance, the same kind of, well, the criteria is another thing I'll talk about in a second, but
basically replace that program as it expires with local dollars to our customers, to our citizens, I think is a way forward to help people get out of here. And as we just heard, the amount that people are behind roughly correlates to what this program provided. So in terms of eligibility, I do want to note that the cost of living is higher in Apex. Rent is higher. Some other stuff is roughly the same, but rent is the big one. You pay $1,500 for a 2-bedroom apartment or 3-bedroom apartment in Apex, where a lot cheaper in some other parts of the county. So I think it makes sense that if we're thinking about a program and we ask staff to do that, to consider that maybe it makes sense for our eligibility requirements to be a couple notches higher, just out of consideration for that difference. So that's where I'm at. I think we should create that program. I think we should pair it with potentially returning to a normal billing practice where customers can sign up for this program, they can get a chunk of their bill knocked off, and they can resume, keep their utilities turned on.
And who would administer the program if we did that?
I've had some conversations with the town manager about how this could work. I don't know if you want to
Is that
fill in the rest of the council.
it's detailed? Go ahead and just get a brief summary about that.
You answer that, Drew?
Just administration.
Need a moment?
Contract with the county to do the means testing. They would say the person qualifies. If the person qualifies, we would transfer money from general fund to utility fund. So really, if the infrastructure is already in place to do that, if we can make that arrangement with the county and then move on from there. It sounds pretty easy. The devil will be in the details, but I think.
How long do you think it would take to get those details, situated so that we could have the details of the program in place before we resume any cutoff?
So our target has been to have this up and running by the end of January, and it'll depend on how much tweaking we're going to do to the program as compared to Wake Helps, and then how responsive the county can be to us to get things set up and running.
So would it be reasonable to extend the suspension of the town ordinance to kind of mid-February? So we'll make sure we have everything in place before resuming this.
I think that we'll push to get the program up and running by the end of January. If for whatever reason we can't, we can come back again and say move it to the end of February. But just for the purposes of the billing cycles, it's better to have things end at the end of the month.
So Drew, I've mentioned a couple of times this idea of having our eligibility requirements being slightly different than the existing program. Have you had any conversations with the county about whether that's feasible?
I have not had any direct conversations with the county, so Mr. Holloman and Mr. Purvis have been the ones working on this.
I'm not spoken directly with the county, but I think one of the county does that at no charge. And of course, it is, again, the same criteria as the program they currently
Yeah, I'm just concerned about putting into place a program which no one in Apex qualifies, because, the higher costs here mean to even be here, you'd have to, you wouldn't meet the criteria for, if it's AMI based, it should be the AMI of Apex, not the AMI of Wake County.
Well, it is 130% of the poverty level, depending on the size of the family. So I think for an individual, I believe it's in the 16,000 range, and for a family of 4, I believe it's in the high 40s, 48 or something.
And my other concern that I've expressed before is what exactly is the burden of proof here on the person applying? If they lose their job today and they get the utility disconnect next week, is that, how does that work? And they still say, my income now is $0, or does there have to be a certain amount of time passed, or does it have to be a pay stub or another tax return or something? I'm just concerned about, people missing out because of the burden of proof being a little high. And part of it is just me being naive about what actually is involved in here, but
I don't want to put into a place where it's too hard for people to get the help that they need, you know?
Yes, sir. Well, we can make those inquiries.
So I would feel more comfortable getting those questions answered before we, decide on a cutoff, utility cutoff. I would like to make sure the program is sufficient.
Point or, letting this expire as it is. And my preference is that we extend it, if you think the end of January is sufficient enough, then to the end of January.
And if it expires at the end of January, when is the first date that someone might get a disconnect letter saying, final notice, right now, go pay your bill?
First week of February.
It'll give you right away, okay.
Well,
So
they would, yes, sir.
My preference will be, when we get to that point, that letter includes information about how to sign up for not only the payment plan, but also the availability of this program to say, hey, we notice you owe $500 behind. There happens to be a program that can, provide relief for $500. I also wish, another note, that there was a way to provide a sliding scale, not that there was a hard cutoff. Let's say if it's $44,000 for a family, if someone makes $45,000, and they're still hurting and they're not getting the hours they used to get or whatever, that's really unfortunate to miss the boat there. So having a sliding scale like, is common in many other programs, to me would be a really desirable feature if that's possible. If that makes sense.
If I could add one thing too, there will be the opportunity for people to sign up for payment plans. So their initial payment would be lower than the full balance. And what I would envision is somebody probably would come in, get a payment plan set up, and then they would also seek this assistance at the same time. And hopefully, again, before they would actually be disconnected, they would have some form of assistance if they're in fact eligible.
And another thought that I had, and it sounds like this is addressed, but I want to make sure the people who have signed up so far, are also eligible to go back and get the relief. It's not like only people who are behind going forward, because a lot of customers have, bitten the bullet and found the money and made the payment, and they should also be eligible for the relief if they meet the requirements. So.
I have a question.
This is Nicole, and to weigh in here a little bit. So in thinking about the date of the, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Okay. In thinking about the date of the cutoff, and I was thinking about Councilman Killingsworth was speaking on February. Would it be too hard to just go to the end of February versus January 31st? And I mention that because there is $4.4 billion that the state has that's unreserved. And there's also $1.1 billion, and these would be not in the rainy day fund. And so while session starts on January 13th, they will go out and come back in closer to the end of the month. And so, for that money to not be spent, it's not going to be spent in December because they're not coming back in session. And so that means there has to be some kind of extension for that, and then for that money to be spent and not go back to the federal government. So I guess my question for us is, if we want to reach out to all levels of government, which is part of their responsibility to take care of the citizens of the state, do we want to be able to reach out to our delegation and others at the state level? And if we do, then we wouldn't be able to really do that until towards the end of January. So I'm thinking about being in problem-solving mode as people are at risk of being hungry, of losing their home, and then access to health care in a pandemic. I think we've got to get into problem-solving. And Mr. Mackey mentioned about the federal poverty and the sliding scale. I mean, we could go up to 200%, which is pretty typical, which is for an individual about $30,000. So I think those are things to consider.
Councilman Dozier, you know a lot more about this goings on in the state than I do, but my understanding was that money, there was an agreement that's been worked out, and they were just going to vote officially on it in January, but I thought it's already been allocated, already been decided where it's going. Is that not true?
That is not true.
Okay.
I've been saying that it's $4.4 billion is unreserved. It's sitting in our bank account. It's not been appropriated. And the rainy day fund holds our savings for emergencies. That's on top of what we got from the federal government.
Okay.
So this money needs to be spent, and it's not. So.
Okay.
And it's for these purposes.
So you're basically suggesting to extend it to the end of February then, to see if that money would be allocated and appropriated to possibly citizens and/or local municipalities?
Right, I think it's our opportunity, to stand up for our citizens and to engage our delegation and the leadership. Once they come back, there'll be new, committee switching and things like that, and to say this is what we need for our citizens. And I think all municipalities should consider doing that. We're not going to get anything if we're sitting back waiting. We've got to be problem solving at this time because it's lasted way longer than any of us thought it would. Alongside working with the county, of course. I was just adding that just to give context for February versus January 31st.
So is the suggestion, help me understand, that we delay the rollout of our program as well to the end of February?
Oh, no. When we were speaking about tonight, I guess we need to do some kind of extension. And so if you all are speaking of a deadline to move to, if we want to take time to engage our delegation, we won't have much time to do that if we are successful at that, because they will only have been in session a few days by the 31st of January. Looking at the potential calendar.
So you're suggesting we extend the disconnect date until the end of February?
Right.
Right.
And in the meantime, continue working on our program and the details of it to get that set up for our citizens to utilize if need be. Yeah.
Correct.
I wonder if we could we could use this program as a way to drive people to sign up for the payment plan as well. If their balance is above the $500, it could be another point to get people to be aware of that program. That also would, prevent them from being disconnected in the long term from the payment plan.
Yeah, I think I also want to mention too, some of the difficulty with spending all the money was the way the money came in. And so I would say it posed some challenges for our elected officials to be able to appropriate some dollars, because it would have been nice if they could go directly to certain places. So I don't know, I just think this is a challenging time, and it's no easy answers.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Do we have to talk about a dollar amount for the program, or is that something we can leave till later?
There isn't a program yet, so how are we going to know?
Yeah, we
Well,
can,
if we're giving
we can bring
direction
back
for-
the skeleton of the program, and then you can decide how much money you want to put into it.
There are less than 100, but there are, among those accounts to be disconnected, commercial accounts. And I feel certain that there are some small businesses certainly in that group. Yes, sir.
Thanks. All right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to extend this until the end of February. I'm not sure what that date is.
28th next year, right?
Probably.
28, 21.
It's
29th, man.
Okay,
29th?
hang on.
2-8.
I don't believe it's a leap year.
2-8.
2-8.
Yeah.
I second it. Stallings?
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any further discussion on it before we vote?
Does staff have enough direction about the program without additional motions or anything? We good? Okay.
Maybe it's not a surprise. I just wanted to, I'm going to pose this because in the absence of such a program, which I think is a good idea, both during COVID and long term, I think there's too much uncertainty, and that $1.4 million figure is only going to grow. So I'm going to pose this. I'll acknowledge that.
Still increasing.
Any further discussion?
I just, wanted to take a page out of Councilwoman Mahaffey's pages. If we decided, I don't think we are, if we decided to stop what we're doing, stop the efforts, then that does not mean you're going to get the money. So in a time when people are not able to possibly have their businesses open at the level pre-COVID or even a few months ago, and the money isn't, so stopping doing something doesn't mean the money magically shows up. And so I think I wanted to remind myself of what you said, so thank you for sharing that at every time we look at this. And the enemy is COVID-19. That's what the enemy is. It's not any particular person. And so I think we've got to really think about supporting people, and it's no one's fault but COVID-19's fault that we're dealing with this.
Absolutely, and I also think that, you know, as the vaccinations come out, as people are vaccinated, that, you know, that business, you know, people start hiring back at that point because people feel safer to expand back to normal levels. So I'm looking forward to seeing changes over these next several months as that vaccine rolls out for people. So.
I just want to add that I receive emails weekly from our citizens and business owners about how can they get back on track. The money's not there. Everybody emails the mayor because they think the mayor can fix it, right? So I don't know if y'all get the same emails, but I believe that we have to continue to move forward in helping our citizens and business owners to ensure that they're taken care of. This is an unprecedented time, and we just need to do everything possible to help. And I think we are pretty much unified in that, and we need to move forward with the extension. So thank you for seeing it that way.
Aye.
All opposed, no?
No.
All right, motion carries 3-1. All right, can we take a quick break? We're almost at 2 hours. Can we take a 2-minute break? All right, we'll take a 10-minute break. Thank you.
There might be extras. Yeah.
I'm not sure we'll.
Oh, yeah. They're extras. Above. Oh.
Yeah, they're extras.
Okay, so they're.
All right, let's get one for Donna and one for Ms. Doe.
Yeah, both of those are right. Do you want me to say gather information necessary one more time? Did you know that?
You probably had someone line off.
That's okay, I'm saying. I didn't actually read it very much time, so I altered it out. I just got worried because there was a folder and I was like, I can add anything.
Yeah, you're pretty good. Thank you.
We actually needed it. But yeah, he's gonna ask. I'm sure he's already said that. Yeah, well, yeah, right. They are, you know, they're still receiving motions. Yeah, but yeah, they're close to the. But it's just as, you know, I know for this workers' comp, right, like, you have to remember that. I think my brother's got extended, because we didn't want to be doing that, you know. Would be.
Yeah, I mean, until they come back.
Huh?
Until they come back, yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I love your outfit.
Thank you. I like your green too. I talked to you yesterday, so we would do it and see if it works. I'm thinking if you have just a acoustic guitarist that sings out front, if you don't have like a bunch of speakers and stuff, that might work because the building will help to block it. And we can see how it goes and see if you get complaints. And then if it goes fine, then we can keep doing it type of thing. I know I've been to, not the one here in Apex, but I've been to the Ruckus and Cary where they had someone on their porch just with a turn. And it wasn't that loud because it was a smaller area. Without amplifier. It's just that it's bouncing, I'm telling you, it's bouncing off of the building into the houses. Because I came up there Saturday and we came down Salem Street and we couldn't hear it next to the historic houses, but when we got to the break in the vegetation between the Zdenek Law Firm and your building, it was extremely loud. It was a tunnel of sound coming out. And so when we turned the corner on the Templeton Street, like your building was blocking it fairly well. You couldn't hear it too much. When they got to that parking lot, we could hear it more. But I was just with my husband out. And I said, was it louder up on Salem Street than it is here right next to the band? And he said, yeah, it was louder. So there's an acoustical thing that's going on where it's bouncing off the wall and like hitting their houses. Yeah. So that's why I think if you're in the front, it would help.
So, yeah, that was our kind of our ladder thing. We had them in photos ago before that in the front. If we faced it down, okay, so there was a solo girl. She was facing, but it faced down that hallway. The guy was there.
He said we'll take upstairs, okay.
We're all taking bets. We're all taking bets tonight. I didn't get in on that.
We should have though. 'Cause you're
I think I won the last time, didn't I?
Really gonna slow down now. Sean's up.
No, Sean is fluid, man. He gets
Sean gets it. That's right. Sean's no nonsense.
Taking further place and
Yeah, and so, and the other benefit of going in the front is that any of the stuff you have in the back, the building inspection, you don't need. The problem is we can't issue permits for the event when there's a violation we can walk with. So if you do not have anything in the back and just have it in the front for now until that gets situated, then we can issue it.
Bye.
Take care. Take care. Oh, no, you're fine. We're not gonna start with that. All right, y'all ready? Ready to move on? Okay. We'll go ahead and move to new business one. Sean Purvis.
Mayor, members of council, before you for this item is a draft, well, it's not a draft at this point, it's our recommended policy statement for Title VI for non-discrimination. So you have the policy statement, the grievance procedure, and associated documents and forms in front of you. This is actually part of a requirement to receive federal and state funding. We have to have these things in place for DOT. to receive money for transportation especially. I do want to note that the required language, the required practices have been in place. They were in all our documentation to DOT. DOT, though, is what we've been asked for, is we need a formal approved statement. So while as you read through that, I hope you recognize that those are things that we do. I mean, it's things that were already in place, but understand the need for a formal declaration. And so that's what this is. Ms. Catherine Packwood and Hannah Whitehurst did a great job in kind of pulling all the information together, putting all this together, and it was great to have help from legal in revising it and going through it. So it's been a group effort to make sure we have everything in place, but then also to make sure we address the things that we know we want to you want to as a council and we want to as a community. So I also like to point out this is just, while this puts us in compliance, this is just one step. This is not the end to any of this. There's other policies and programs we are already reviewing and been reviewing, but we have an immediate need and deadline on this to get it done just for compliance sake. So that's it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks once again.
Questions? Comments?
Just appreciate updating the language on this.
Yes,
Thank you.
ma'am.
Same here.
Same here.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve Killingsworth.
I second it, Stallings.
All right, any further discussion on it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. Business too, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, Mary. But see, I added the blue. I knew somehow y'all would be wearing the blue. That went perfect with that.
Yellow is a happy color, though, I'm telling you, Miss.
So for new business two, what you have in front of you, we received two letters. They're requests from DHIC. This is a project you are familiar with. DHIC is looking to build the Broadstone Walk affordable housing project. It's a 164 affordable family housing unit that would be near, it's on Hughes Street near the Peakway out toward the Walmart. I do want to say Mr. Tim Fisher is online in case you have any questions directly to DHIC later, so he's been able to join us tonight. The requests are twofold. One is for grant funding. The grant funding would cover the cost of water and sewer capital reimbursement fees. This is similar to what was done for Casino Lane for this project. Council had considered actually this when this project was in a different phase and a different design over a year ago, and able to, and for 100, it was only 150 at the time, and council had approved that then. So this is in effect actually only a $15,000 increase from that. The second letter is the one that is more notable, and that it is a request for a loan for $1 million from the town. There are terms to the loan. It would basically mirror what the county does for their housing. It's 30-year term, 1% interest. This would be for the development and construction of the projects. They've asked for $1 million. This fills their gap in. Hopefully, when they receive a 4% tax credit, they have other funding sources. We've seen the pro forma. This is what we fill that in. I did note in the memo that I provided for you that the original request was going to be $100,000. As the market shifts and they talk with trying to make sure they have their money lined up, talk with the county, the $800,000, they could do $800,000, but it would mean they potentially have to redo the makeup of the classes of their units as well as the rates, meaning they would have to raise some of the rates and then change up the makeup of some of the units are at 40% of low to moderate income, 50% like that sort of thing. They're very confident with their business, with the model they have in place to make sure they can market the apartments to get the funding as well as renters, and also the $200,000 additional request would make sure that affordability actually stays lower, which is what they had initially recommended. So I just want to make sure there was an understanding of why that bump came, because I think originally you may have heard $800,000. So that's all I have for you. You have the memo, you have the letters. If you have any questions, like I said, I'm here to answer what I can, and Mr. Fisher's online as well.
I had a question, Sean. I'm not sure if you might want, or maybe Nicole or the mayor, Councilman Dozier or the mayor. This is coming before we get the final affordable housing plan, which I was hoping in that plan. I'm not sure. We got the little preview of it, but I'm not sure if it's in the plan itself or whatever is, like, I want to know, like, what the biggest bang for the buck is for these affordable housing units. Obviously, I want to maximize that. And I just don't know. And I recall from the presentation, there was like the money was, they recommended spreading it out to the, the rehab things and this kind of program, and I forget the other ones. But it didn't prioritize that, and now we're being asked to make a kind of a large decision here. So do we have information that you guys maybe know about, is this an effective use of money? And I know it's a reality thing, which is kind of nice, versus like a in theory thing, but do we know is this the best use of affordable housing money?
So without, and I know the mayor may have talked to some of the committee, steering committee, as well as Ms. Dozier. So from the standpoint for what I've only spoken directly with DHSD and what's going on in the history of this project as it's come about. I think the biggest impact is what you've already said, and that's a reality thing versus, so this is 164 units that this money helps them get built, right? So if the direct need is just more affordable housing this is the concrete building of that. Yes, there are other needs, maintaining your existing affordable housing, that's where you look at assistance programs, the rehabilitation programs. There's also other programs that will be mentioned in the affordable housing, whether it's down payment assistance, other rent assistance, that sort of thing. Those are coming. I don't know that they've been prioritized, and I know I'm putting Diane on the spot. I still don't think they've been prioritized yet.
Yeah. And that's by design, because it's really, you need to do everything that you can, so when opportunities present themselves, you need to take advantage of them. I can tell you that just going to all the regional meetings over the last 2.5 years, the 4% tax credit is where it's at. It's guaranteed money. You do not have to compete for, but it takes more partnerships. But that is what Durham is trying to do, and they're way ahead of us, and that's what they're focusing on right now. I know it's a good thing to do a 4%. If we can swing it, if the county can swing it, it's a good thing to support.
Okay. I mean, other programs like the down payment one, there's no like 4% matching or whatever that would be called as the tax credit. So there, in theory, this money goes a little bit further just by the tax credit, I guess. Right. Are you saying that?
Yeah, it's definitely a leverage on that. So there is a 9% tax credit too, but it's extremely competitive. They have tried. It's not they have not tried. They did not. Even though they scored very well, they did not receive that because it's more limited, and it's very competitive. The 4%, to Diane's point, it is open. There's a lot of folks that can get it if they can put their pro forma together. They got to put that portfolio together, that financial piece. The county is committing a lot. The county on this project, you're looking at $3 to $3.2 million that the county's committing. So we're kind of that last piece, and that's what helps it, locate in Apex. That's what brings it here. It also looks good if that commitment's made as they get their other backers and all their other financing in place.
Okay. So. I just throwing everything at it. That may be the reality, or maybe like some years we do more of things than the other. But like this is going to commit a good chunk of it. So I just want to.
It will. So, and to address that, and I apologize, I should have made that point. Right now, the way that the Affordable Housing Fund, where this was come from, is funded with a penny. It's roughly $1 million. Right? The recommendation from staff is you can commit future funds on it because you have tied it to the tax rate. We know what it's going to roughly be, and they will not need funds until this time next year. Because they're still, they're finished in design, they still have to go through the process, so they need it when it comes to actual construction. So we can split between the rest of this year and next year. So you still have some funds going into next year. You still have about $500,000 roughly to be able to. To Diane's point, I think by design that it's not prioritized in the plan. That's left to you, right? So it's so that you as a council can have your discussion. You as a cohort can decide what is your priority and how you want to apply that. And I realize, statistically, you're looking for what that biggest bang for the buck is. This builds the apartments. That may be what council decides. That's what we want. So it's not. We're going to look at other places. We know Durham's trying to do this. We know they found success in their programs, and if we're kind of following suit on where they found success as well. So.
Well, and just to remind you, this is the project that we had presented at the retreat
earlier this year, and at that time, it was going to be about 3 million for the county and 3 million for us. So they figured out a way that our share is not equal to the county share, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, in our attempting to, get more developers to do affordable housing for us, this is guaranteed affordable housing within, the limits that we know people need it. This is not, 60% of AMI or 80%. This is a guarantee and through, DHIC for affordable housing, and people that qualify for it will get it. So to me, we're basically putting our money where our mouth is at this point and saying we're guaranteeing 164 units, however many people will live there that need affordable housing. So,
But if another Broadstone comes tomorrow, I mean, what are we going to do?
Well, and unfortunately, I can't answer that one for you. Oh, I can give you.
If another Broadstone comes tomorrow, what are we going to do?
I'm sorry, Mr. Hook, what is something come?
If the same project comes tomorrow, we will have allocated this money, and maybe we have to raise the amount, but.
Well, I can go ahead or.
There's a delay. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, you're on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned my name before, I've known Greg Warren for over 2 decades, and I've known of DHIC for just that long too. And one of the things that you're getting with them is, and not that others aren't doing great work, but you're getting a group that this is what they've committed to their entire focus, and their entire time, and it's not just providing safe, affordable housing for people, but doing so in an equitable way and connecting people to resources. It's not just getting into the home, but as I said, I worked with him for a while just in connecting people to health insurance options and things like that. So, and if you remember from the presentation at the retreat, just all the things that they did related to services for the families there. So when you're getting a DHIC product, you're not just getting new constituency, but you're getting another set of people who are going to feel like they belong in this community and going to have these services wrapped around them to ensure that, whatever they may be dealing with, that means they can afford this housing, that they'll have what they need, and hopefully they will stay in our town. And so this is the location that I remember that was available for this project. If you get another project, then we get to be good on that road. But we don't need to wait until we get the affordable housing plan perfect, because like Ms. Ken said, you gotta take your opportunities if we want to really create this beloved community. And we're not gonna get it perfect ever. But I think we'll get down the road to making it better and better to look like what we all think and what we value.
Mr. Gant, thank you, Mr. Escher. Mr. Gant, to respond to that directly about what if there's the next one, the only thing I can say is I can bring the numbers to you on what we have and what you can consider, and then you get to decide what you're comfortable with in terms of your priority. And I would say that it's not, it suggests that it's not any different than any of our capital projects that you go through.
Yeah.
And yes, you did set up a fund for the affordable housing, and so we have that as a bank fund, if you will, to use this to use for these types of projects. You're not limited to that. So that's the other numbers I bring to you. I mean, you have ability to expand beyond that. I mean, general statutes, and then that's why in the memo I referenced several general statutes about where, what you can do. I mean, that's general fund money as well. So you have ability to go beyond that if you so choose. So I think to what Ms. Dozier just said, you take them as they come. You can prioritize as you go, and then we see what you get in. This may be the first step in. Others realize they want to be a part of this too, and then that may be a problem. I say problem, quote unquote, that you want to have, and figure out where you go from there. My responsibility will be bringing you the numbers financially, and for you to decide what what the options are and what you're comfortable with, and then Diane and her team will look at how it fits in terms of our planning efforts with the affordable housing plan and what recommendations they have.
Okay.
Mayor, Yolanda has her hand up in Teams.
Okay. All right.
Good Good evening. My name is Yolanda Winstead. I am the new president of DHIC. I'm succeeding Greg Warren. I started back at the end of July, and Tim Fisher's our project manager. He's on the line. I wanted to thank you for this opportunity, and I wanted to just follow up on the Mayor Pro Tem's comments, just to give you a little more background if you're not familiar with DHIC. We are a Raleigh-based nonprofit. We've been in Raleigh and Wake County for over 45 years. We currently own and operate over 40 low-income housing tax credit developments in the city of Raleigh and throughout Wake County, including Beach Ridge Apartments, which is 2 phases of property that we developed 25 years ago just down the street off of Upchurch from Broadstone Walk. And we're in the process of actually renovating that property now. And we appreciated the town's support back in the day when we were developing that and putting in that road extension to access the property. That's a good example of what you'll see as far as quality and maintaining of the properties. You can drive by it and not be able to tell that it's affordable. We're very committed to the developments we do. We do have wraparound services that we offer. Through our resident services line of business, bringing partnerships to our communities to provide services related to health and wellness, employment opportunities. If they're seniors, we help connect them to opportunities to age in place and access services as well. So I would like to just thank the town for the opportunity to consider our request and just point out that the 164 units at Broadstone, the estimated development cost is just over $33 million. We've requested a little over $3 million from the county, and with the $1 million that we're requesting from the town of Apex, you're really spending about $5,800, $5,900 per unit of your funds to get 164 units of affordable housing that will remain affordable and restricted by deed restrictions for 30-plus years or longer to maintain that affordability. Our goal is to maintain the affordability for multiple levels of income bands for residents in perpetuity. So we do not have any plans to ever sell the property. We will, continue. Your investment is going to be well spent and serve a range of incomes from 40% of AMI up to 70%. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Thank you.
All right.
I appreciated the range of incomes, too, that this project will help target. And Ms. Ken, I had a question. I don't know if you can briefly address. I think you mentioned we were way behind Durham with affordable housing efforts. Will our housing affordability plan recommendations help address some of those issues? Will this project help address some of those issues? Can you speak to that?
Well, they've been doing this over a decade. It's
Yeah.
probably more like 20 years.
So maybe it's just the
so
fact that
we're doing a good job by getting started, but yeah, we're behind them. And so the interesting thing with both Chapel Hill, Orange County, and Durham area, they come to like the TJ Cog meetings, and they're like the old wise ones that know things. So they get up and talk about their experiences, that they've tried this, they've tried that, they've done this, they've done that. And honestly, what they've realized is, sure, 9%'s great, and most of these developers are going to try 9% once or twice, and then at that point, it just makes sense to go to the 4%. And so Durham was saying that because there's so much more money out there, if they can leverage it, they're encouraging their developers to just go straight for the 4%. So, that's just where we are.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
I'm curious to what happened with the county, to how we arrived at the number of them contributing 3.2 million, less contributing 1 million, and where that, there's some talk in here, and you spoke earlier about how they pushed back against the mix of units in order to lower the cost. What was that thing?
So I can't speak to that. Tim may be able to address some of that. I just, they're putting their portfolio together as well. So the county they have a much more established program, and so they contribute, a certain amount of funding through it. They have a application process and everything that's already in place that we're working to build. So Tim, did you want to address any of that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sean. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. And I just want to echo Yolanda's comments that, I very much appreciate the opportunity to come to you guys and make this request. All the staff we've worked with to this point have been nothing short of amazingly accommodating. It's been a pleasure to work with everyone at this point, and looking forward to continuing to work on this relationship and see Broadstone walk through to the end. With regards to the county, I obviously can't exactly speak to their motives and what goes on behind the scenes. What I can tell you is that they came to us with what they call their best and final offer, and their best and final offer requested being 40, but what was more concerning for us was they requested some increase in the 70% and the 60% rents. And where that becomes an issue is in bringing the rest of the pie together in terms of the financing, the capital stack. And what you can't have is you can't have a rent scheme that isn't able to be underwritten by the equity investors. They're going to want to see some level of discount to a market rate unit. So what we did is we went to some of our partners and we just basically got a gut check. And we wanted them to tell us, based on what our proposed rent scheme is versus what the Wake County rent scheme is, just give us a gut check. How do you think the market studies and the underwriting from the investor side is going to come back? And, they were very candid. We've had long-standing relationships with these equity investors, and, they came back and said, as your rents are proposed now, we think they're fine. They're, I don't say butting up against the threshold, but they're closer to the top. With the Wake County scheme, some of those rents would be above an investor threshold, what they would be comfortable with underwriting in terms of the discount to the market rent. So that was really the incentive there. Is we spent a lot of time over the past couple of years figuring out what a rent scheme is that our property management thinks would lease up in a timely manner, that we think would be absorbable by the greater Raleigh market. And we arrived at that scheme. Then when Wake County came back with the increases, it's just a level of increase that we aren't necessarily comfortable with. We don't think some of the equity investors are comfortable with. So our thought was if Apex could help us close that gap, represented by Wake County's lower offer were we not to accept their rent increases, that would be the most advisable course of action.
So naive question. So the concern is that the increase in the rent, the discount would be too small for them to be leased up in a timely fashion. They wouldn't be able to be occupied at a rate that would pay themselves back?
Well, that to a degree, yes. I would say that would be secondary to what would be a larger issue in that the equity investors may take issue with that rent scheme being a little too close to market rates. And that's a cascading effect, right? Because then that starts to affect your equity pricing, which can even exacerbate the gap. So
There's two offers from the county. One has us kicking in $800K, one has us kicking in $1 million. Is that what's here? And
Yes, in the most basic sense, yes, sir.
Okay. And the two rent schemes are the difference between the two of them?
Yes, sir.
All right. And we prefer the one where we kick in $1 million from a...
Yes.
The DHIC prefers that in terms of
right.
the rent structure.
That keeps their model in place and keeps the most affordable, affordability at the best levels too.
I just want to say, I'm skeptical not at all of this development. And DHIC, when you're Person of the Year from the News Observer, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. And you have some big shoes to fill, I think, as executive. It's just the downtown plan mentions the Shangri-La Mobile Home Park near my neighborhood and how it's one owner, and I think it will require some town funds to prevent it from being just redeveloped in a normal way, to preserve some of those units for the people who live there. So I see that coming down the road, and it may come years from now after this is already paid off, or after we've allocated this money. So I'm antsy that we may get pushed soon. Hopefully it'll be a while for that particular one, but I have that concern that is always gnawing at me after reading that plan, talking about that particular development, and the one where the Peakway, the Southeast Connector is going to be too. I think.
Let me offer that. Well, one, annually you are adding money to the fund, whatever's not used, plus the annually. You have the ability to change that in whatever way you see fit. The other piece is, keep in mind, this is a loan. And yes, it's over 30 years, and there's other things that could happen, and there's fluctuating rates or whatever, but there is an expectation that there will be money coming back because it is a loan.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So keep that in mind as well. It's not just here you go and that's it. So.
that's fair, and I did, yeah.
That was one of the points I want to make. The other thing I wanted to say is, I don't think of this as spending $1 million so much as using $1 million to leverage $30 million plus of investment to the town, or 800,000, whatever we decide to do. So bringing those local dollars to match other, county and state and federal funding is, I think, a great use, because you're really getting $30 million of impact to the area, not just the $1 million. And $1 million, as we're learning, isn't a tremendous amount of money when it comes to affordable housing projects. So to be able to leverage it, I think we should try to do this every time,
Good point. All right, any other discussion? All right. All right, thank y'all so much for providing comments there. So we'll go ahead and take a vote,
Do we have a motion already on the floor?
or a motion rather, yeah.
Yeah.
Make a motion to approve Stallings.
Second, Gant?
Everybody, I was eager to vote. All right,
So to be clear, we're approving the $1 million, your motion's for the $1 million.
And the other one.
And the grant funding
And the grant funding.
for capital reimbursement.
Yeah.
okay, we got it? All right, we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, it passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Lana. Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
So,
All right, we now move to closed session.
Thank you.
We have two closed sessions tonight, items on closed session. Closed session one, possible motion to go into closed session to consult with the town attorney pursuant to NCGS 143.3.18.11. A3, to discuss the handling of the matter of Empire Contractors, Inc., the town of Apex. And then closed session two, possible motion to go into closed session to discuss a personnel matter.
So moved.
All right.
Mahaffey?
Second it, Stallings.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, it passed unanimously. We'll move to training room 3A, is that right? Okay. And we will be closing the meeting in that room tonight, so we won't be back in the council chamber tonight. Happy holidays, everyone.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Just a reminder, if Nicole wants to stay on the meeting, shut that computer down. Do you want to stay on the Teams meeting, or do you want someone just to call you upstairs?
I want to be whatever, make sure that, it is actually,
Yes.
transmitted, and, whatever I can hear and stuff. So if there's a way to be on Teams where I can see and hear better, yes. So, just let me know what to do. Let me just log off now, or?
Yeah, what we'll do to ensure it is we'll send you a new, I'll make a new meeting right now, and Mr. Smith and I will get it set up, and I'll send you that in your email.
Okay, great. So yeah, it looks like the link works for me, the others don't.
I'll send it just as I did in my email. Does that work?
Yep, thank you.
Sure thing.
All right. You all have a wonderful evening.
Where are you going?
I'm going home, but no. Actually, I'm going to go to my office for a little bit. Then I'm going home. But have a wonderful evening.
You're going to be working for a while
Have
longer.
a wonderful holiday season. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Yes, sir. You too.
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy time with your family.
Yeah.
Likewise.
Yeah, I'll leave this Friday. I'll be out until 30th, 31st. Good. But enjoy the couple of weeks. Yeah. All right. Drive safe, okay? Have a great holiday season. Merry Christmas. You too.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Sounds off. Yeah, sounds off. Sounds off, just plays off. It should be. Yeah.